All right, guys. So we merged two panels. This is the civil rights and the economy and the antitrust panel because they kind of go together. And our antitrust lawyer, Kristen, is out sick. He got a fever last night, so he didn't make it today. And Lynn and I are going to talk about the antitrust implications or the impact of antitrust on the economy and how civil rights blends in. And then we have the civil rights experts on here, DEI and others, to talk about the civil rights impacts on the economy. So we're going to merge the two because they pretty much go together, as you'll see as we go through this. So I'll just do quick introductions. This is Josephine Morning, Peter Spann, Denise Rosemond. Oh, dude, I'm drawing a blank.
Dave Anderson.
Dave Anderson, thank you. Sorry, Dave.
It's all good.
And Lynn Pingle. It's been a long couple of days, but this is all great. And everybody here, I know them, are working on the economy, right? They're all doing things to either prevent discrimination from hindering people in the economy or trying to work on solutions to help us do that. And I'm going to start with Lynn because she has a PowerPoint and it deals with contracting and some of the lawsuits that have been brought and what that means for minority contractors. So, Lynn.
All right, Brady, I'm going to just click this and just right through. So when you're ready. Okay, let's continue to the next part.
All right, then Dave, why don't you go? So, and the whole idea is, what are you doing in your community on economic inclusion? What would you like to see done in your community? And what would you like to do with FSIC on economic inclusion?
The thing that I think a lot of people don't take time to process is that this is not a microwave, this is a crock pot. And while we're sitting around arguing about ingredients, we need to start cooking. And what that means is if we still are sitting in densely populated black and brown neighborhoods and they're designated food deserts, we have a problem. If we are looking outwardly for economic solutions when it comes to employment, we have a problem. We live, I don't know, maybe because I'm from Earth 52, but here on Earth 1, there's a kid named Ryan. And Ryan is 12 years old, and Ryan does not manufacture a damn thing, but Ryan makes $30 million a year reviewing toys on YouTube. I have a client who makes $275,000 a year literally teaching people needlepoint on YouTube. But everyone is telling me, because we've been addicted to the 40 hours a week for 40 years to retire on 40% of our income, which is why boomers are the first generation to have the next following generation do worse than they did. We have to start looking at what those solutions are. So for my company and myself, when it comes to consulting and business building, what we're doing is taking what you have, showing you that it is a discernible, profitable skill, and then showing you how to monetize it. That's what we did when we could not get jobs in white neighborhoods, and it's what we need to do in order to secure ourselves.
Lynn, Brady, is ready? Yep. So Lynn.
All right, thanks, Brady. So I'm just going to run right through the antitrust policy reform and how it actually affects small businesses. And the latest lawsuits, Brady, the latest lawsuits that came out is really what is driving this. And we as small businesses, minorities specifically, and even women, we got to understand what stage has been set and such. And so the next slide, we're going to talk about this big thing called rebuttable presumption. This is the foundation and the basis of all these lawsuits. The hard part about this is the intent is to level the playing field. You guys have heard this, right? Level the playing field. But do you guys know the rationale behind checking the boxes? Yeah? What is it? No? Checking the boxes is basically saying, hey, I'm a person of color, and two, I'm a woman. Right. That's it. Or I'm socially disadvantaged, or socially or economically disadvantaged, right? That's what we interpret as checking the boxes. When we lose a project, it's because they just checked the box. They just collected my proposal or they just collected my bid. There's actually a deeper meaning to what leveling the playing field is, and it's based on these three things: compelling interest, strict scrutiny, and narrowly tailored. They took the three things that created all of these minority-based programs and flipped it on its head. Next slide, please, Brady. So compelling interest is basically the rationale behind why we have set-aside programs, the DBE program, the MBE program. Brady, if you can hit that next slide, that'd be awesome. Basically, it's the court saying that you have to remedy a specific and identify a past discrimination. We know we've been discriminated on based on race and gender. But again, like I said yesterday, we haven't specifically identified ourselves as the victim of discrimination. If there's evidence of the past, well, yeah, there's been evidence, but has there been documented specific evidence that exists? Answer was no. Did you hear that? The answer was no, right? The second one was it intentional? As far as we're concerned, it sure was. But was it documented? Answer was no. Did the government have a hand in the past discrimination? All in favor? Yes. So 1 out of 3 was eligible for compelling interest. And you know what they said? Who said something about the disparity studies? I think Maria? Yeah, that Maryland's conducting it, right? Quote from the Supreme Court, doesn't matter. Because it was not specific, nobody owned up to it. They don't have the documented individual that solemnly swear I was discriminated on by the state of, or the city of, or the county of. And until we put ourselves in the line of fire, yeah, it's not going to change. So the second part, next slide please, Brady, is the strict scrutiny and the narrowly tailored. Strict scrutiny says, prove that we actually went after the project and did not get contracts because of blatant discrimination. Ouch. So we can't just say, you like the contractor. We can't just say, you didn't give it to me because I'm black. You gotta go to the, are you qualified to do the work, right? And then the last component is, was it narrowly tailored? No, the programs were not narrowly tailored. They were broadly. But then they catered to one specific, like right here. It only select minority groups, and guess who the minority groups are? We are, and women. They specifically went after, in one of the cases, against women. So I'll go to the next one, because again, I want to just breeze right through this, and if you guys want to learn more, I'll talk more about it. Go ahead. So what is antitrust and anti-competition? It is basically the Sherman Act, Clayton Act, and the Federal Trade Commission Act. You guys have probably heard about it in one form or another, but as it relates to procurement and contracting and economic and social well-being of minorities and women, it is designed to foster a competitive market, period. That is supposed to level the playing field and to prevent that monopolistic behavior that is kind of sort of happening now, but it's supposed to prevent all of that. That was the intent. What's happening now is they're doing away with the Croson law that, what's his name, talked about, because there's new legislation that exists. The Ultima versus USDA SBA that happened in July 2023, and then in October of 2024, next slide, we had the milling company as well as this trucking company. This is not about race and gender. This is about antitrust laws. Why is it about antitrust laws? It's because it's taking away industry-specific code. If you're in procurement, if you are in contracting, if you are working with a government, there's this thing called the National, North American Industry Codes. That is how the United States government classified the piece of paper that they purchased, the gas, the oil, the whole 9 yards. There is a code for it, including construction. For this trucking company, he had 2 codes. And in those 2 codes, this is what we as small businesses do not understand. It's not just one code, it's everything that falls underneath here. Long distance trucking, short distance trucking, container trucking, you name it, it's all in there. This lawsuit wiped out these 2 and all the specific NICS code. Martin needs to know this. I made mention to this before he left. Yeah, because this wipes out. What does this mean? If this organization calls your Department of Transportation and says, I am interested in bidding, the goal for minority and women and small businesses no longer exists. They cannot pull a goal on that project. Not just for trucking, the entire project. Right? Okay. So let's go to the other one, the milling company. What do you think a milling company is? Clothing? Textiles, clothing? Sure, then it could also go to grains and things like that. But in this case, it's related to highway, building, bridge, land, and highway, right? And that's what this code is taking about. Go ahead to the next slide, Brady. So, what does highway, land, and bridge construction look like? In one NICS code, it applies to parking lots, sidewalks, bridges, roadways, anything concrete, anything asphalt. So if you have this code in the construction realm, you're out. They will not put a goal on this particular NICS code. But this is just one company. Let's go to the next slide, because they didn't just have one code. They had another code. They had the civil engineering code. So goodbye, civil engineering firms owned by Black, brown, and women. Because if they express interest, this one's not going to get a goal. How many engineers that are women? This involves water. I can't even explain. This involves everything. On the last one, signage, putting signage up on the highways, that's eliminated, right? So not stop there, there's one more. This is his third code, construction of buildings. That means every building, y'all. Every building in the United States. All they have to do is call Kentucky, call Indiana, call any one of your state DOTs and say, I'm interested. They don't have to bid. So they could be paid off by the whitest of the white, richest of the rich, general contractors to say, I would like you to bid on this. Well, include you in this. Could you express interest? How does 10,000 sound? Somebody said that about the phone. 40,000? 50,000? Yeah, that's what this is going to do. So when we talk about, next slide, antitrust, we're kicking off industries. We're taking off industries. And why is that important? Because now it's monopolistic. The big guy can play in the little pond. That's what it's supposed to protect. But they're not just going there. They're attacking the industry. Those are the highest. The other case is that Ultima, it took out 541611. That is the administrative management consulting on the professional side. They took that out. There can no longer be bids on that one on procurement projects. That's crazy. So what is the fight? The fight is we need to be aware that we just lost an opportunity, and we need to champion the letters that we need to write about antitrust, because this is no longer race and gender. This is about industry. That's what this is about. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. So I'm going to jump to the other side and to Josephine. So Josephine's been a tireless activist and fighter for economic inclusion. She sued Geico and a couple other people. So talk a little bit about what you've seen, what you think the future looks like, given everything Lynn just said, everything that you know is going on right now.
Well, let me say, I think the future, as far as African Americans are concerned, is looking bleak right now. And the reason I say this is yesterday I was late getting here because I had a press conference. We had a press conference out at the Capitol, on Capitol Hill, a group called the Coalition of Concerned Clergies has asked me to join them, so I've been with them on several projects. And the one thing that really stood out as we were there is the leader said to everyone, look, if you're afraid of being retaliated against, by Mr. Trump or Mr. Musk, anyone else, then don't show your face. We are going to be on camera. We're going to take pictures. So if you have that fear, you need to hope to stay back. What is that? That is when Dr. King, this pre-Dr. King, when we did that. But here they were telling us if we had that fear, do not, stand there in front of that camera, because there was TV cameras out there. So we're being rolled back. And the thing is, you're telling us this, and some people are really afraid because they're afraid of being retaliated against by our president. We saw during the election with the Georgia ladies that worked at the election booth, election facility, just how far they would go. You would think, I'm just a little person. They wouldn't come at me. Well, they went at the people, the ladies in Georgia, in Atlanta. So where we roll back a long ways. We got to get some guts and say, you know what? Do what you may, but I'm still going to stay out there and fight.
Thanks. So Denise, you've been in this realm for a long time. What do you think the future looks like, and what suggestions do you have in terms of how to combat this?
Well, again, I've been in the business. I always tell people since I was 2 years old, so it's been over 25 years. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs and changes regarding what they're calling diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what's happening right now. I feel like we're in the third or fourth Reich, exactly what went through in Germany, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I've always spoken my truth. Our truth, my organization, we work with a lot of private equity firms, and what we've been doing is working with them to make sure they understand the whole process of what DEI is, and it's not just affirmative action. So if you put that through, what I did a quick synopsis. Brady, right. If you could go through. What I say that we need to understand what diversity, equity, inclusion means. Diversity is a fact. You can hide it, but right here we represent what it means, and equity gives us a choice. And with that, we have inclusion, which I call is the action that you use, and belonging is the outcome. So no matter what they call it, they could call it leadership, they could call it whatever they want, that's what it means, that's what it is. You can't get away from it. Next slide, please. Let's go real quick. So, and I say the roots started out in the civil rights movement, which was actually in the 1950s. I don't know if I could see it very well here, but then it really never talked about diversity. What they did was address affirmative action, not in the real sense. And then with JFK's executive order, really talked about he talked about affirmative action, and it was actually to help employees that were treated unfairly. Then you go back to executive order of Lyndon B. Johnson. He solidified what affirmative action is, and then through the civil courts that happened, the challenges of the 1970s and 1980s is what the history is about. So when people tell you that affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion are the same, it's just one to support each other, and through the variations of terminologies over the years, it's changed. So next slide, please, Brady. So where did it come from? So it was an expansion from compliance to culture. What the organizations were realizing is that we're bringing people in, but we were not supporting them. We were not including them in. And that's basically what the DEI whole history was about. Let's include these individuals. So this was about organizational factors, organizational rights, organizations really getting more revenues, whether or not they want to accept it. They realized with the data that was being provided through McKinsey and all the other data that they needed the changes in people, what was happening. Next slide, go ahead, Brady. So that's how it is. So when it emerged in the 60s under President Johnson, I talked about before, it evolved. So that's basically, so what do we want to do about it? We're seeing that we have to keep the fight. We have to maybe go back to the equal rights piece, the legislations, and I think that's what we're doing here with this organization, with FSIC. We need to not give up and not be afraid. Yes, there are some terms, and I understand some schools, they're telling them to take the words off. I have educators that are so afraid. It's just unbelievable. So I say we have to just maintain, let people know we are still here, and what it's about, it is an organizational structure. It's not about just affirmative. We have to go back to that. We need to understand it's about discrimination, and you shouldn't discriminate against anyone. When I talk with my CEOs, and I usually tell them, and the way I get them to really understand, I talk to them about privilege. Once you have that conversation with them on a one-on-one privilege, they understand, they know what's going on. So the narrative that's being spilled out there doesn't really make sense, and they know that, but that doesn't mean it's gonna, So the key takeaways I see is that we need to stay focused, we need to keep at it, we need to organize ourselves, be with groups like this group, with FSIC, make sure that you are listening to the legislation like Glenn talked about, and everybody's been talking about all along that I've been here the last couple of days. and just not to give up, not to be afraid, but speak your truth, understand, know what you're talking about. So, and the data is important. You have to have the data too. The data, we talk about bad data, good data. Research the data. Make sure when you're talking about, you're showing people. So one of the pieces is about, let's look at pay equity. Let's look at how we pay people. So that's how you have your data. Look at women. How many women do you have? How are they being paid compared to the men? Let's look at your whole process. Now they're going to go after looking at race, but there's other ways that you can do it. I say there's more ways to skin a cat. So I say we just have to really keep focused, keep it right, and you can't be by yourself this time. We cannot do it alone. And we have to really have the foundation to understand what we're fighting. I don't think people know the true essence of fighting. So we're just fighting, we're fighting for DEI. We don't even know why we're fighting for DEI. DEI is what the organization's transformation. It's really talking to your people internally. It's for the organization. You don't want that. Guess who's going to lose? You all have businesses. If you don't have diverse people, you're going to think the same thing. You're going to have groupthink. So it's good that we're different panels, we have different races and cultures. That's why when I do my piece on DEI, when I go into organization, I call it leadership. They could say whatever they want. I say, I'm talking about leadership, I don't know what you're talking about. So
Thanks, Denise. Peter, your turn to inspire us, and you're a lawyer, you're civil rights, and a minister, so you got all the angles.
Oh Lord. But I do want to say that I'm glad we kind of set the table for what diversity, equity, and inclusion, what that really means. And I am an attorney and a pastor, so I may be going back and forth in between those two roles as well. But when we think about the roots of it, and I'm so glad the sister covered that, going back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and knowing that that prohibited discrimination based upon race, sex, disability, veteran status. And then we know that over the years, companies decided to implement what we now call D&I initiatives to protect themselves from discrimination lawsuits, and in some instances to address systemic racism. So when we think about DE&I, and as I was preparing for this panel talking about DEI and the economy, we know that I was looking at a 2023 report from Harvard Business Review found that white women have been the biggest winners of corporate diversity programs, securing the majority of promotions and leadership positions intended to increase diversity. The Global Black Economic Forum says that studies show that over decades, the most diverse businesses have greater innovation, higher revenues, stronger consumer support. Diverse businesses outperform their competitors by 36%. They innovate at a rate of 70% higher and have an ability to create new products and services at a rate of 84%. So when we think about DEI, what is this really about, right? We know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is good for business. And so we know now that it's really not about that. When we look at business from a conservative standpoint, they say they want a free enterprise and deregulation, except in the area of DEI. They want it in everything else, but except DEI. And so when we take a look at this, we know that it's really at its roots at social control of black people. We know that DEI has really become the new term for, I'm not going to say the word, but for referring to African Americans in a derogatory way. Mm-hmm. So we hear things like, a DEI hire and things like that. So what does that mean? That means that any black person that has achieved anything is there simply because of their race. Mm-hmm. And we know that's wrong, because even the statistics show that black women have more degrees than any other, they've outpaced any other race and gender and ethnicity in having degrees. And so when we take a look at this, and it's been said that we're gonna have to fight. And Kevin asked me to put on my preacher hat, so I guess I will. And I was thinking about it, and I was looking at Exodus chapter 1, and it said, "Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, 'Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. And the text goes on to say that they began to deal harshly with them because they saw how they were growing and how they were able to thrive even in the midst of difficult situations. And so I just want us to understand that what we are battling against is nothing new, that we have been in these fights before, we have been in these situations before. And I think of the words of the late, great Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. I used to listen to him all the time. He said the difference between a moment and a movement is sacrifice. And so we have to think about, we're either going to sacrifice on the front end or on the back end. Sacrifice is coming. I'd rather sacrifice now while we still have some rights, as opposed to when this thing becomes full-blown Jim and Jane Crow segregation and we trying to recreate the Montgomery bus boycott and all that. I'm at an age, I don't know what it's like to have to drink from separate water fountains, have to look down when talking to a white person, cross the street when they're walking. And I know in some of our minds that's far-fetched, but, unless you're like 70, 80, when you can actually say you actually dealt with that, most of us, can say we have not seen that yet. And so I would rather us sacrifice on the front end, where now we can stand up and do what we need to do to take a stand, so that we don't have to endure, we don't have to go backwards, because our country is prone to go in cycles. The current administration, it may be life and death for us, but it's just an inconvenience for other groups. So it's not really that big of a deal. And, the Democrats aren't going to save us. We've always saved ourselves. And so I want us to be encouraged in leaving today and realizing that that we have what it takes to go ahead and make it. And I'm just going to make one more reference, Kevin, and I'm done.
Sure.
If you stay in Exodus and you go to the 3rd chapter, where God is talking to Moses at the burning bush, he says, "Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." And I believe that we've been here in front of this burning bush, getting all of this information, getting all of these connections and networking. And I believe that now it's time for us to go out. It's time for us to leave here, to leave the mountaintop, and to go back to our communities and be that voice that they need. It's not just enough to come here and learn all of this and make all these connections, but there are people, our people, who don't know the things that we know, who don't have the experiences that we have, that don't see the train that is coming down the tracks at us. And so I hope that we leave here today with a fresh wind at our back and ready to go ahead and attack what is happening in this country.
Thanks, Peter. That's good. We could go on, and I don't want to belabor this. I do want to see if there's any questions in the audience. And if not, I want to leave you all. I have one question for the whole panel. Because the one thing that does, I think you hit on it, Peter, just there, is that people don't seem as worried as I think they should be. And I do think, and I'm trying to figure out how we lost the high ground on civil rights. And so I want to throw it to each of you guys. You're in the communities, you're in this business. How did we lose the high ground on civil rights? What did we do wrong? Lynn, start with you.
How did we lose it? I think it's because we got complacent. We got comfortable. We, at least, I don't know, y'all, I'm 51 years old, and I think I figured that was my mama's fight, not mine. And then I got into this mix of procurement and contracting when I came to the United States. And again, I work out of the European and Asian model, right? And it's a little different over there. We're a societal, the good society, not the communist society. It's a societal thinking, so it's always been about positive group think. So coming here, it just seems like we got complacent, we got comfortable, everything was going good, and even when the other side was in power, it didn't seem so bad until it got really bad, right? So I think we have to pivot from that complacency and really look and observe. And Kevin and I talk about this because I have that frustration. It's like, oh my gosh, right? And they've got this strategy. Even Dave and I were talking about this. I think we as a group, as an organization, like I think Brady said, when those requests for signatures come out, we need 100 signatures. We need 10 million signatures. Isn't that what T-Mobile had, 10 million? Yeah, we need those 10 million signatures, because this is going beyond the power of one, right? We need the power, and it's this grassroots thing. So how do we educate? And this is why I threw it out there yesterday. If y'all want a one-pager, if we want to do specific stuff, I'll spend a couple hours with you guys, and let's put something together so you got some talking points and some materials. I think it starts there, in that grassroots level, and then go out, right? The whole, if 10 people, they know 10 people. I think that's how we're going to have to attack this.
Dave?
Can you give me the question one more time? Because I want to make sure I answer it the right way.
How did we lose the high ground on civil rights?
Whew. Well, at the risk of being the person that wasn't alive when civil rights happened, I can only go by the fact that, my parents were, my grandparents were, and they told me stories. And my grandmother would say this: Black people were more worried about sitting at lunch counters with white people who don't make as good food as I do, as opposed to building everything up. She said, out of the 9 children I popped out, 8 were born in Black hospitals with Black doctors. We all had our own butchers. We all had our own corner stores. And so what we did, she's like, how many Black hotels are there in Philly? I'm like, none. She said, when your mother was your age, they were everywhere. So we got addicted to a drug called white adjacency, as opposed to standard group economics. And for those of you who say, but we need everybody. Yes, we do. Shout out to Brady, shout out to Rick, shout out to Lynn. I do think you do need a coalition of the willing. I'm not on that. My last name is Anderson, not Farrakhan, but I am here to state facts, whether you like them or not. And the fact is, if you go to New York, if you go to Boston, if you go to Baltimore, if you go to Chicago, if you go to Dallas, there is a little Italy, there is a Chinatown, there is a Koreatown. You know where Brothertown is? It's the hood. And most of you don't want to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so while we talk about these little things and the evil orange Hitler that's doing all the horrible things, I think we need to start looking practically at the fact that we do not do enough to sustain each other. The other part of that is my father had a corner store in Harrisburg, and his best friend was a guy named Quang Na. Now, Quang Na was a Vietnamese man. His wife, Young Na, was Vietnamese. And the funny thing was, he says, well, what's your son going to do? Is he going to take over the store? Well, no, Dave's in entertainment. He's on the radio. That's his path. He said, well, little Quan and little Young, because they named their children after them because names mean things in legacy and so on. Well, see, little Quan is going to go to law school, and he's going to be the lawyer for the family. And little Young is going to get an accounting degree, and she's going to make sure she maintains the books. We do not do a good job of being stewards over legacy and passing down skills. Even Joseph, where we're going to go biblical, and I'm not talking Exodus Joseph, I'm talking Joseph, stepfather of Jesus. Even Joseph had sense enough to pass on a skill because it was his parental responsibility to pass on the skill of carpentry and working to his child. We don't do any of that because we want to go out there and go here, and we never look internally. And then the funny thing is, they keep coming to us for all of our talent. They keep coming to us for all of our skills. They keep coming to us for all of our sex. Do you not even realize that the Revolutionary War was won by Black women? I know you're like, Dave, what are you talking about? Well, see, medical doctors, much later on, after Washington had several terms in office, medical doctors said, you know what, George Washington he's got too much blood in his system, so we need to do this thing called bloodletting. But in order to help the revolutionary troops going back to the actual war, they understood herbs and remedies and cleaning and cauterization of wounds and things of that nature, while all these learned people didn't. But you know what we do? We give out our skills and then we get nothing for it. That's why the hair industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar hair industry, is not controlled by black women. That's why soul food is not controlled by black people. So if you want to make an actual change, yes, policy, yes, papers, yes, all of those things, and let's start making Brother Town.
Same question, Denise.
Okay, I ditto what Lynn said and what Mr. Anderson said. In addition, I think that we did not teach our history enough to our children, in that they tend to forget. They don't understand, they don't see it. So this whole thing about I don't see color, I'm not saying that, that's this new generation, they're colorblind. There's no such thing as colorblind. The minute somebody walks in that door, you can tell what color they are. And that's okay. Just don't stay with that color. That's not all you see. That's why you have to see past the color. Look at the heart. Look at the person, the individual. And that's why there's a whole range. It's a mosaic. I don't say it's not a mixing bowl. It's a whole different type of bowl. It's a whole culture. So I believe it was Mao Zedong. I read a book, and our kids are not reading historically. They're not reading far enough. They don't even know what happened beyond one generation. And I think one thing I was great at going back and seeing, just the compassion. There's no compassion to. So our kids don't know. I think it was, I'm not trying to break this up. I think Mao Zedong, there was an interviewer that interviewed him, and they had asked him, they went to China, and they saw all the marks about what had happened before, and they had like white only, and they asked him, why didn't you remove those signs? He said, we don't want to forget. So maybe we need to keep some of those signs, the water fountain sign up, and so that we don't forget the way it used to be. I think we're comfortable, and then we have the crabs in the barrel mentality. We don't really want to help each other, because I know I work with ExxonMobil, and I tell you, I was, working in that field, and I did not see one person of color trying to bring me up. I have to say, it was the other that helped. Some of them helped. But again, exactly. So that's what I'm saying, that we need to go back and teach our kids. They need to understand, yes, it's fine now, but don't forget your history. You have a Bible that tells you go back to the history and read it, but you're not looking at the reality, the social implication of what's going on now.
Thanks, Denise. So, Peter?
Sure. I just jotted down a couple of things while everybody was talking, just to kind of answer your question, Kevin. I think we just got complacent as black folks as we began to kind of move up socially. I think of even like during the Obama years, and I voted for him twice, so I don't want. I know that can be a touchy subject if you say anything about Obama. I think a lot of us just got excited to be able to be invited to the White House and all that, but we lost the Voting Rights Act during that time. We lost the Supreme Court pick. I mean, Trayvon Martin was killed during that administration. So
Black Lives Matter came out.
Black Lives Matter came out during that. So, I mean, I think we took our eyes off of the ball. And so, we're kind of getting a readjustment now, right? We're getting our wake-up call that we should have never taken our foot off the gas. Secondly, I would say join something, join some organization that's doing the work. FSIC is doing great work. Kevin sold me, he said, look, I just need 3% of your time, that's all. He said, if you give me that, that's good. And I can do that, right? Because most of us, our job isn't civil rights. We got work, keep a roof over our heads, kids, this and that. We got all kind of other stuff going on, and that's real. But we have to be a part of there's some organization in your community, SCLC, whatever, that is doing the work. Your local church, if you even as a pastor, if your pastor's not preaching social justice, you need to run. Like for real, because you'll be singing and dancing right back into Jim Crow. So, and if it's not there, if you love your church, that's great. Maybe you can say, hey, maybe I can start a justice ministry here. you know, brother pastor, sister pastor, can I start something to get us going in that direction? I'm not saying leave, but if there's nothing going on there, you need to either rethink that or be the catalyst for that. And last point, I'm done. I would say we need to start thinking creatively, right? Because this administration won't be here forever.
That's right.
And, you know, when this is over, the strategy can't be, well, we're going to fight Trump or we're going to get things back to where it was. No, the way it wasn't working. Why am I going to stand over some rubble and ash and say, you know, let's build it right back the way it was? No, we need to start thinking, because they're going to tear it all down. Yep. So we need to say, you know what, okay, you want our vote, here's what we want. We don't want what it was, because what was not working. And so we have to be careful about letting politicians come and say, you know, we're going to get things, we're going to right the ship and get things back. No, I don't want it back to the way it was, because the way it was not working. So it's good. It's already being torn down. So we need to start pushing elected officials, and we have to think creatively. Don't let them come up with the plan. Bring the plan. Say, here's what we would like. You know, I like the idea of building spaces for us in our cities where we are, you know, that we can be able to thrive. So I would just say those are three things I was just thinking of that we can try to do.
That's good. Josephine, go ahead and close us out.
Okay. First of all, I want to say this. We are raising a bunch of lazy kids. I want to say lazy A kids.
Well,
Okay? And let me tell you, I was born in 55. So I was around during Jim Crow, okay? And I grew up in North Carolina, a little small town. So I saw all of this. But the problem is, as we overcame, that's what we think we have overcame, but we really haven't. But as we progressed and made more money, we ended up giving these kids more. And we thought it was good because we said, you know, we suffered so bad, we didn't have. But I find that the more you give them little lazy guys, the worse they get. So you know what? You got to let them struggle like we did. Yeah. That is the problem today. Yeah. They're not struggling. And they don't know what it's like to struggle because, you know, mama got the mortgage, I ain't got to pay no rent. You know, food, microwave, she got food in there, I'm gonna go get my food and put it in the microwave. We need to start these guys working from the time they 13 or 14. Put their tail out there at McDonald's, wherever, but start them to working because they are some lazy kids, and they're, because of their laziness, they too lazy to go outside and walk around the block. So now we got kids that are sick. Diabetes. I've never seen as much diabetes in young kids. Overweight. Yeah, I'm overweight too, but you know what? It won't because I was sitting around, okay? But they're sitting home playing games, and they're playing these games that's actually teaching violence.
Yep.
And then we wonder, why do we have all these kids in jail? That's the new slavery, baby. And they build these games and so these kids can play these games that teach them about violence, and then they take this, now see, they take it from what they see with the games and taking it to the street and shooting and killing. I've never seen as many young people. And girls, come on now. Girls used to have pride about themselves. They not even thinking about picking up a gun because they delicate. Today, they don't care. It's like, what has happened? We have got to do better about our children and our grandchildren. I keep telling everyone at everything I go to, look, you need to teach your children, as the lady said before, teach them about the civil rights. Teach them from where we came. Teach them that this was not the norm that you see now. And teach them that if you don't know where you came from, you don't know when you're going back. And right now you're on your way back, and you do not know it. So my thing is, if I can leave just one thing with you, and that's the other thing, we got to learn how to stop thinking we're better than each other. We need to stop it, because none of us is better than any of us. Just in this room today, I saw a person walk up, they never seen me, they didn't say hello or nothing. So I took the liberty of saying hello, because see, I'm gonna make you say hello to me, okay? Because that's me. But why are we segregating ourselves from each other? That is our problem. We talking about segregation, we're doing it among each other. We don't even want to live around each other. I love to live around black people, because one thing for sure, they taking care, as long as they taking care of everything. If they don't know how to take care of everything, let's talk to them about it. Why is it now we can't even find ourselves to sit down and talk to someone? We will go and buy the fried chicken from Mr. Young, but black people started fried chicken, baby. That's what we used to do on Sundays, fried chicken at the table every Sunday. And we cook the best fried chicken. But black people can open a restaurant. We won't go there and buy the fried chicken. But Mr. Young opened a restaurant. You go buy his fried chicken. What's the difference? We need to start supporting each other. We need to stop. Lose the chains. We still got the chains from slavery. And we are teaching this to our children. Break the chains. Because that's what it's all about. In slavery, they taught us to not like each other. Okay? They taught us that. They didn't want us to read. Because if we read, we'd know too much. Okay? So this is all coming back. It's all coming back. So if I could say anything, I would ask you to please stop segregating yourself from each other. Learn how to live together. Every other race can. We're the only one. We can't live together. These other races got 10 to 15 people in the house. One person saved their money and they go out and get a house. The next people save their money and it goes on and on. But they put their money together and they can live together. We need to learn how to live together without killing each other. Thank you.
Well, on that note, we will end. Thank you guys all for coming. It's been a great 2 days. Thank to Kia and Tay and the rest of the crew, Brady for being adult supervision. Rick, and of course all the great panelists. I mean, I don't know how many of these you guys go to, but I'm always amazed at the really brilliant people we get to have come and talk and explain stuff to us and help us figure out paths forward. So thank you guys for the panels too.
I made copies of the policies that I've written, if you guys just sort of want to grab one so you can see what it looks like with the statutes. It's stacked right there at that desk or table.
We have to get in the mindset of learning to come together and resource our solutions.
You can really start to make a difference and get them to wake up and pay attention to your issue.
We have to be able to recognize the power we have.
We're on the move. We need you to be on the move too.